Welcome to another episode of AutoMundial, the weekly car news and review show, where this week we take a look at the newly facelifted Hyundai Kona.
Plus, Mini's latest hot hatchback, a hybrid from Vauxhall,
and the Alpine A110S. That's all coming up. First though, Maserati has unveiled its first new supercar since the MC12 in 2004. The MC20 is the first of 13 planned new models that aim to reinvent the historic Italian brand. When it's launched next year, the mid-engined flagship will come with a 621 brake horsepower twin-turbocharged V6, Maserati's first in-house new engine since the 1990s. Designed to take on the likes of the new McLaren 720S, the MC20 is quick, with 0 to 62 miles per hour dealt with in just 2.9 seconds, onto a top speed in excess of 202. All the power is sent to the rear wheels via an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission. However, an electric version is also on its way, along with a convertible. Deliveries will start in 2021, with prices starting at just over £187,000.
Since its launch in 2017, the Hyundai Kona has offered crossover buyers something a bit different from the more obvious choices. It looks cool and modern and manages to stand out from the rest of Hyundai's lineup while still remaining true to the Korean brand's design language. And now, ready for 2021, it's had a refresh. But when we say refresh, we pretty much mean restart. The new Kona looks better than ever following its heavy facelift. External updates include a new front grille, reshaped bumpers, and fancy new lights all round. The front end looks like some sort of alien, particularly on the sporty-looking N-line models. We're especially fond of the Audi-style vents above the grille, although lower trim levels don't look quite so angry, with fewer scoops and crevices. Interior design tweaks are less significant, with a restyled centre console being the biggest aesthetic change, although there are some updated features and a new selection of trim finishes. Hyundai has thoroughly refreshed the tech and infotainment too. There is now a 10.25-inch digital instrument panel from the i20, and the central touchscreen has been enlarged from 7 to 8 inches and is fitted as standard with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So what about performance? Well, happily, there is a diverse range of powertrains on offer. The range-topping petrol motor uses a 1.6-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine with 195 brake horsepower and is available with front or four-wheel drive and paired with a 7-speed auto box. Below this, there's a 1.6-litre, 134 brake horsepower diesel with a 48-volt mild hybrid system and paired with either an auto or manual box. And then there is the entry-level 118 brake horsepower, 1-litre turbocharged 3-cylinder petrol model, again available with mild hybrid power. The updated Kona Hybrid will continue to use the same 1.6-litre petrol engine, hooked up to an electric motor, while the EV version is also on its way. And if that isn't enough, a sporty Kona N is expected sometime next year with the engine from the i30N hot hatch. That means it should get around 250 horsepower to rival the likes of the Volkswagen T-Roc R.
Speaking of rivals, the Hyundai has its fair share of competition. Few cars in this class come close to the wild styling of the Hyundai, but this, the Toyota CHR, certainly stands out. Like the Kona, it's been updated only recently with a bolder front profile and revised headlights, just some of the new external details. Under the bonnet too, the Toyota has a good range of engines, from a 1.2 petrol turbocharged motor all the way to a 2-litre hybrid. And inside, there's new infotainment, which includes connectivity for Apple, Amazon and Android systems, although it is a little clunky and can take some getting used to. And while it is eye-catching, that sloped coupe-like roofline doesn't do much for the practicality, and in this market, that is key. So, what about this, the Nissan Duke? The Duke pretty much started this class. It's nearly 10 years old now, and its love it or hate it styling with a strange front end and a chunkier rear end has split critics ever since. One thing's for sure though, it turns heads even next to the Kona. But the Duke is let down by its lack of engine options. The only engine offered from launch is a 1-litre turbocharged 3-cylinder petrol from the Micra, with either a 6-speed manual gearbox or an all-new 7-speed dual-clutch automatic, replacing the old CVT transmission. It's likely, though, that a hybrid will join the lineup at some point, and maybe even an electric version. On the road, it doesn't feel quite as modern as it looks either, and the cabin does look rather busy and cluttered. But for now, it's the lack of powertrain options that let it down, and in a segment where there's no end of variety, that won't really do. So it seems that the king of the crossovers has been dethroned, but with cars like the Toyota CHR and Hyundai Kona on sale, we can't say we're surprised.
"2020 sees the 20-year anniversary of the BMW Mini Cooper. Now in its third generation, this little hatchback has become an icon in its own right. And it's almost 2 decades since the first John Cooper Works badge was stamped onto the back end of a new Mini when JCW was still an independent company. Since 2008, BMW has owned JCW, and in this period the Bavarian makers brought out various hardcore models. The GPs represent the most a Mini can be, and now there's a new one. It's called the Mini Jcwgp, and it's the fastest and most powerful production Mini ever built. How, may you ask? Well, the Jcwgp hits the dyno at 306 brake horsepower, or from a 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine. That's 75 more horses than the standard JCW, thanks to plenty of new engineering wizardry. Add to this model-specific sports exhaust, 8-speed Steptronic transmission, bigger brakes and a new chassis setup which puts it 10mm lower, and you have one mad Mini. And as if you hadn't noticed, the Jcwgp also features some special front and rear aprons, a roof spoiler with double wing contour and flared carbon wheel arch covers that protrude from the bodywork like some sort of 80s racing car. Inside there are 2 seats, a steering wheel with paddles and a roll cage, but that is about it. Put it together and the Jcwgp goes from 0 to 60 in a tad over 5 seconds and to a top speed of 165 miles per hour. It has reportedly gone around the Nürburgring in less than 8 minutes too.
So if the Jcwgp is quick, stylish and race-ready, how does it compare to the Honda Civic Type R and Renault Megane RS Trophy? We've pitted the Civic and the Megane against each other before, with the Civic coming out on top. But can the Mini take the crown? From a styling standpoint, the Mini is just as ludicrous as the Honda. It's not quite as sleek as a Megane or Golf GTI, but we think hot hatches should look a bit crazy. But while the Mini may have the Civic match for bonkers styling, inside it's a win for the Honda. Terrible infotainment aside, we love the red seats and modern look. The build quality is excellent and there's room for 4 adults. The boot is plenty big enough though, but the rear wing does hamper rearward visibility. Out on the road though, the Civic is still a stunning car to drive. The power delivery is rapid throughout the rev range, and it feels quicker than a Megane RS or Golf GTI. It's sharper too, with what must be the cleverest differential in the class. The ride is very hard, but you forgive it when you go for a drive because the chassis is sensational.
In a game of top trumps, the Mini won't win you many hands. Its power and top speed put it second, 10 brake horsepower down and 4 miles per hour slower than the Type R. It's pricier too, but that's unlikely to put off the Mini aficionados who'll be queuing out of dealerships to get one of the 3,000 being built. And if we're honest, we can't blame them. This is one of the most exciting looking hot hatches we've ever seen. And 300 horsepower in a Mini is always going to be fun.
After the break, Vauxhall's new hybrid SUV and the French sports car taking on Porsche.
Coming up, the Alpine A110S, but first...
When we first saw the Vauxhall/Opel Grandland X in the flesh, it's fair to say that we weren't exactly blown away. Yes, it was spacious and practical and pretty well built, but it felt like a white good. Something to be bought because you needed a cheap SUV, not something that you desired or lusted after. And while that can be said of many contemporary SUVs, the Grandland was just missing something. Now though, we may have found it in this, the Grandland X Hybrid 4. Using the EMP2 hybrid system as found on other products in the PSA stable, the big Vauxhall finally looks to have come of age. Off the bat, the technical specs look promising, with a pair of electric motors, one at each axle, married up to a 1.6-litre turbocharged petrol motor. This is the beefiest model in the brand's current lineup, and by quite a way. The gearbox is an 8-speed automatic, and with the electric motors, the Grandland X is no slouch, with 0 to 62 miles per hour taking less than 6 seconds, thanks to a combined output of 296 brake horsepower. The car can do 84 miles per hour on electric propulsion alone. According to Opel, the 13.2 kilowatt battery will provide 35 miles of all-electric running. Slightly disappointing though is the lack of DC charging, but despite this, the cells can be fully charged within 2 hours from a 7 kilowatt wall box. Unfortunately for consumers, this isn't offered as standard, and for anything more than the charger, you'll need to pay up. But at least you can schedule charging through the smartphone app, which can potentially mean you can take advantage of the off-peak electric vehicle rates. There are 4 different trim levels on offer, starting at over £36,500. The entry-level Hybrid 4, the Business Edition NAV Premium, includes an 8-inch colour infotainment system, dual-zone climate control and cruise control, amongst other things. Next up is the SRI NAV model, which comes in at an eye-watering £41,000, but not all hope is lost, because there is a less powerful version with just the front-mounted electric motor for about £3,000 less. Inside, little has been done to improve the dark and dull interior, which was one of our criticisms of the petrol and diesel Grandland X. Everything feels a bit low rent, despite being skewed together pretty well.
So, with the pricey Grandland X struggling to make the grade, which crossover is passing with full marks? Well, it's no secret that Toyota has long been a pioneer of hybrid technology. This is the new Toyota RAV4, the latest version of the iconic pint-sized 4x4. Now in its 5th generation, the latest RAV4 is available with hybrid power only, and while it may have grown in size from the 90s original, it does at least still catch the eye with a striking new design. The interior isn't quite so bold, but it does exude Toyota's build-to-last quality. However, not everything is quite so impressive. The infotainment display, for instance, is horribly old-fashioned and clunky to use, as well as lacking support of Apple or Android systems. There is some good safety stuff like lane assist and cruise control, and even the base model is packed with features. It's also good value, with entry-level two-wheel drive cars coming in at well under £30,000. On the road is where the Toyota differs from its Japanese compatriots. You might think that it would be a Prius in a RAV4 skin, but with a 215 brake horsepower 2.5-litre petrol engine, it's a lot punchier. The ride is smooth, and the switch between petrol and electric power is almost seamless, producing a refined ride.
So, which is the hybrid SUV to go for? Well, on this occasion, we'd actually go for the Grandland X. It might not be the most exciting thing to look at, but performance is impressive and all trim levels come loaded with kit.
A few European manufacturers have triggered our nostalgia buttons in recent years by reintroducing the names of some iconic rally cars. Fiat launched its 124 Spider in 2016, and Renault reinstated the Alpine A110 name in 2017. What's more, they've built some souped-up versions too. In 2017, Italy showed its hand when famed Fiat tuner Abarth put its touch on the 124 Spider before turning it into a successful little rally car. And now the French have followed suit. The A110S is a torquier, lower and stiffer version of the A110. As a result, it's even faster and more focused than the standard car, which is certainly no slouch. The S badge and higher price tag are justified by additional power output, which takes the S closer to 290 horsepower compared to the 249 in the standard A110. This is thanks to a larger turbocharger on the 1.8-litre four-cylinder engine, which retains its 7-speed dual-clutch transmission and electronic diff. The S is also equipped with stiffer springs, new anti-roll bars, dampers and carbon ceramic Brembos, as well as stickier Michelin rubber. Aesthetically, the S is identified by carbon fibre flag motifs on the rear pillars, Alpine inscribed across its back and an optional matte grey paintwork. A quartet of Fuchs GT race alloys contrast with the orange calipers to complete the look. At 1,114 kilos, the S has gained a few kilos over the standard car, although an optional gloss finish carbon fibre roof helps shed 2 back. Put all this together, plus the lowered ride height, and it's a recipe for an incredible package. Over the standard A110, the S is more composed, grippier, and the additional 40 horsepower gives it a welcome dose of extra poke, while the meaty Brembos do an excellent job of keeping everything in check.
So if the A110S is head and shoulders above the already excellent A110, how does it compare to the equivalent Porsche Cayman? Well, the comparable Cayman would be the 718T, at least purely on cost. Like the A110S, the 718T is propelled by a 4-cylinder turbo, but the Cayman is 2 litres to the Alpine's 1.8, and this gives the Porsche a few extra horses. And like the Alpine, the Porsche has also gone on a bodybuilding workout session, gaining 15 kilos compared to the stock 718 Cayman, despite the removal of the infotainment system and metal door pulls. The 718T gets its extra bulk from the new particulate filter, which puts the Porsche over 200 kilos heavier than the delicate little Alpine. Where the two differ is in the transmission. The Porsche is fitted with either a 6-speed manual transmission or Porsche's heavier PDK automatic gearbox. Contrastingly, the A110S is only available with the 7-speed auto. With all this in mind, do the Alpine's add-ons justify the higher price tag? The answer to this question depends on what you want from your car. If you're looking for a track-bred racer, then the A110S and the Cayman T are great options. But to 90% of drivers, the originals are so good that you probably wouldn't notice the extra benefits. For the other 10% who can exploit every ability from the car, both the A110S and the 718T are good choices. If a key was placed in each hand, we'd go for the Alpine. While both cars are very capable, the Alpine is just that little bit more special. Like its ancestor from the inaugural World Rally Championship, the Alpine is a giant killer and the current mid-engine sports car to beat.
Join us again next week on AutoMundial as we check out the McLaren 765 LT.